Well, greetings everyone, and welcome to our second official State of the Church address. I'm Pastor Donald, and it is an honor to come into your home today. Whether you're listening through YouTube or Zoom, we are glad you're watching and listening. Friends, we've had 4 months of strictly online worship from mid-March to mid-July, and now we've had a little more than a month since we started allowing outdoor worship. I know how joyous it has been to see you all in person. I know I certainly missed that, and I can't tell you how many of you have expressed gratitude for being able to see one another, even with masks and socially distanced. From the very start of this pandemic, and as we continue making decisions that will impact us collectively, we want to remind you that the health and safety of those who are part of our church and those who would visit our church will be our number one priority. And even though we've started gathering outside, we haven't rushed to come inside the building yet, even though we know many are wondering when we will. And even though some of you were sad that we did only online for the 2 Sundays when it rained the past month, we were not in a place where we felt comfortable or ready to have indoor worship yet. And so as you know, we've had 3 outdoor worship services to be specific at this point. But as you know, we've been trying different things and we have been learning as we go, including working with a new YouTube channel. And even realizing today for Booten that our Wi-Fi connection wasn't supporting both YouTube Live and Zoom, and so we need to work on that and figure out a better way. But you know, there are a number of churches, my wife's included, along with United Methodist churches in our very own district, that aren't regathering for in-person worship until 2021, until there's a vaccine and it's able to be distributed. And we realize it's different for every church, and every church should do what's right for them. You know, some churches started meeting before we had our first outdoor worship service, and some are not meeting after us for quite some time. But we did want to hear from you too, and so we did put out a survey last week to kind of assess the land, to number one, hear about your comfortability level coming into the church versus staying outside for worship. And secondly, to get your opinion on singing in the church. This is a big contention point for many lately, and one that many disagree on. So we just wanted to hear from you and see where you landed on that. Now, as a preface, I'd like to offer a helpful analogy that I heard that I wanted to use for us that I think will be helpful, and we actually use this in our survey as well. So we're all on this road to continuing to regather and make the best decisions possible in that regathering process, and we're going to hit some traffic lights along the way. So help me out here. Green means go, yellow means not go faster, but proceed with caution, slow down, and red means stop. Now, there are 3 different groups of people when it comes to how they view COVID and regathering for church. For some, the light is red. For some, the light is yellow. For some, the light is green. And also that light may change depending on what we're answering in terms of questions or what we're looking at. But green light people are kind of the front runners, right? They're the risk takers. They probably aren't as concerned with wearing masks or using hand sanitizer. They might think COVID is a bit overblown and that we need to get back to normal as soon as possible. So when it comes to regathering for worship, green people are the first in line to get back to church, not just outside, but inside as well, saying, no worries, no fear, all systems go. Yellow light people believe there are still good reasons to be cautious and have kind of a take it slow and let's see approach. You know, they take common sense precautions. You know, they abide by all the things the CDC is telling them, wear a mask, obey social distancing. And yellow people are really glad we're gathering, and they'll be ready to come consistently, but they're still somewhat cautious. And red light people are those who are still not wanting to leave their homes to come to church because maybe the risk just isn't worth it to them, or because they just want to have one less point of contact for them based on who they're interacting with each and every week. Red sees the hot spots around our nation and says, see, this thing isn't over by a long shot. They may be the people with underlying health issues or having someone in their family who has an underlying health problem, and they might not return to the church until there's an all clear or a vaccine, whether later this year or even 2021. And you know, I remember talking to someone just this week who actually takes care of their mother each and every weekend. And for that reason, they want to minimize contact wherever they can. And so we might not see that person, for example, until 2021. Now, speaking of traffic lights, even though there was, believe it or not, an even statistic between a willingness to come for service outside versus inside, About 75% of you were willing to come inside, and about 80% of you willing to come outside. But there were differences in regards to what traffic light you described yourself as. For us here at Boonton United Methodist Church, in response to the question of gathering inside the church building and your comfortability level with that, 57% of you said that you're green, right? You're ready to go. You're willing to come inside. 36% said they're a yellow traffic light, and 7% said red. Now, when asking about singing inside the building, 50% of you are green. Basically, that means I think singing in the sanctuary is perfectly fine so long as masks are kept on. 14% of you are yellow, which is I think singing is okay if done minimally and or done toward the end of service. And 36% of you are red. Don't think those who come for worship inside the sanctuary should sing at all. And even if we break those down in terms of who answered the survey, in terms of who's actually been attending outdoor service, we still have the same amount of people who don't think singing should happen in the sanctuary at all during the pandemic. About 40% of those currently coming for outdoor service who filled out the survey said they do not think we should sing at all. Now, what I'm about to share with you, I want you to consider like more of a game plan. I'm not an architect with a blueprint, but a coach with a game plan. An architect is someone who says, hey, in the blueprint, this is exactly how it's going to be with lots of precise details. But a coach with a game plan means we have to remain flexible and willing to call different plays as the game time conditions shift and change. And we know the landscape of COVID-19 is always changing week to week, it seems. And so we'll always adjust whenever needed and remain flexible, and especially if it's to put your health and safety first. And so know this game plan is subject to change. And if that's not a big asterisk you're used to seeing in these pandemic times already, I don't know what is. Now, as you know, New Jersey has made significant progress in flattening the curve, and we praise God for that, even as we see COVID-19 spiking in other places across the nation, especially down south and out west. We're not nearly back to normal in this upside down time we find ourselves, but people have been venturing outside now. They're walking, jogging, swimming at the beach, getting their hair cut, shopping inside, dining outdoors, and those are encouraging signs of progress for our state. Now, I'm interested, and I know a lot of people are interested to see what happens with schools. We know some schools are regathering in person, some are doing only virtual, some a combination. But we are interested to see what happens in the first weeks of schools gathering again. If there's a spike, if there's anything alarming that might happen. But as of now, our plan for continuing to regather is going to be the following. We are planning to do another full month of outdoor worship. And so pretty much all of September, you can expect to be outside. The first Sunday we would consider going inside will be September 27th and beyond. So that means if before that date it happens to rain, we will still be having strictly online worship from home if the weather does not allow us to gather outside. But so long as it's not raining, we will have outdoor worship. Now, I did hear from a couple of you that you would like to see us go inside in the month of September if it's raining. If that's you, I encourage you to reach out this week, talk to me more extensively. Would love to hear from you and hear your perspective a little bit more. And also share a little bit more detail of the conversations our regathering team shared both at the beginning of, or a week and a half ago, and also before giving this address tonight. Now, there are lots of things that still need to happen before we are ready to come inside. There are some action steps that need to be taken, some legal related things we were just informed of that we need to ensure that we're thinking about so that we're protected in case anything might happen. And also, because of the nature of what September will bring, continuing outside does make sense to us, even though most are willing to do outside or inside based on our survey. And just to give you a few examples, Labor Day being the first Sunday of September, when many are away, we're not sure that we could really have the volunteer support we'd need. The second Sunday of September being our Blessing of the Backpacks, and wanting to make sure that families that participate feel comfortable being a part of that service. And we know that an outside service is likely going to be much more conducive to having more people willing to come out. And the third Sunday of September is going to be our confirmation celebration service. As you know, we couldn't do it back in May, and so we're doing it now in September. And likewise, with that, wanting to make sure our confirmands and their families especially feel good about coming to service. But that's our game plan as of now, and we know not everyone will agree with it, but that is what we are asking you to plan for. By the way, for the blessing of the backpacks, which will be September 13th, we won't be asking your child to come up to the front or bring their backpack forward, but to actually hold their backpack and do a repeat after me prayer as we bless them and their backpacks into this new school year. But on September 13th, we will have a special bag we will want to put into your child or grandchild's backpack or the trunk of your car if you'd prefer, that will be a month's worth of Sunday activities. For our church, we have, as of now, decided that we will offer opportunities in the fall for gathering outside for Sunday school for our older children, but not necessarily our younger children. No, our young ones aren't necessarily the best at social distancing. And also because of the call to minimize contact, we can't really do crafts and such like that, which are usually helpful to do for that age group as kind of hands-on type things. But we're really limited in what we can do hands-on, and it's a lot more conversation. But that's why for all our little ones and parents, grandparents, guardians of our younger children, we are planning to put things in your hands and backpacks that you can bring to church and do at church or do from home if you're worshiping from there. But for our older children and youth, if they end up coming, the Sunday school experience is going to be much more conducive to being conversational and working well that way. And once again, if we get the students, we do have some of our Sunday school teachers who are willing to engage in those conversations and have something special for our older children, our youth. And I will say, most of you once again expressed that you are just as comfortable coming inside as outside. And that's really helpful for us to hear, because 2 months ago when we had our first survey, only about a third mentioned they were kind of in that green territory and willing to come inside, versus 75% at the time were willing to do outside. So now the playing field's really evened up in a lot of ways. And so it's great to hear that just as our state has been making a lot of progress, you've kind of changed your perspective of your comfortability level and where you're at. Now, I will say I was a little disappointed that we didn't get as big of a survey sample size this time around. And we didn't hear from as many as I would have liked regarding those attending in person at present. It was enough, of course, to help us out and guide us, but we would still love to hear from you if you didn't fill out that survey. I encourage you to reach out to me, call me, email me. But whenever we regather inside, and as we continue meeting outside for the time being, I want to just share this big idea with you. More than the when of regathering and when we actually come inside the building, I'm always more concerned, even more so, about the how of regathering. Because the how of regathering really is a spiritual matter of character, much more than simply a matter of calendar, which is what the when often is. And so, mindful of this as your pastor, more than the date we set to move from outside to inside, I'm concerned with how we honor and respect each other's needs in the process of returning for worship. Because we have people in our church who are at all different levels of comfort with regathering. I've heard from people who are loving outdoor services but are still eager to go indoors. I've heard from people who think we should stay out as long as the weather allows us to, and so many other perspectives. And if you're part of our church family and a follower of Jesus Christ, then you might be familiar with the command of Philippians 2:3. It says, "Do nothing from selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility regard others as better than yourselves." Or as another translation puts it, value others or think of others as more important than yourselves. In other words, as we continue to gather for worship, whether it be outside or inside, it is vital that we take the needs of others into account, and especially even more than our own preferences. In fact, here's a practical way to put it. Think of the most vulnerable person in your life, your MVP. When you come to church each and every week, don't take precautions that you're comfortable with. Please take precautions that we're requiring as part of our guidelines. But even more so, take extra precautions that would make the most vulnerable person in your life more comfortable. In other words, you may not feel like you need to abide by a certain protocol, but because you're a follower of Jesus, it's not about you, right? It's never about us. It's always about others. The grace and patience we show each other in this process runs much deeper than the dates and details of the phase we're in. And let's be honest, there may be something inside some of you that sort of rolls your eyes when you hear what I've been mentioning just recently. Because let's be honest, we're all under a lot of pressure. We've all had to sacrifice so much in this pandemic. And now Pastor Donald's telling me to think of other people's preferences as more important than mine. Many might say, well, what about my preferences, my opinions? I've got my pressures, my patience is wearing thin. And if people don't share my perspective, well, then forget that. Perhaps that's your perspective. Perhaps you would feel that way in a certain extent. But, I don't think God cares as much about the when of our regathering inside, back in the sanctuary, as much as God cares about the how. And so can I ask, how are you regarding those who have a different perspective than you? Because this church does run the spectrum, even if we might have a majority in one area. We have people all over the map with all sorts of opinions and feelings when it comes to how we continue to regather, and all different kinds of traffic lights. But Philippians 2 is about how brothers and sisters in Christ honor each other. And that's what we want to do each and every week that we come together. And so the point is not to go running around telling people your color and trying to persuade them to change theirs. But the way we honor Christ is honoring and respecting one another's opinions and needs, as treating theirs more important than our own. And here's the key, even though we may have a majority this way or that way at any point, whether green, yellow, or red, BUMC is not a green, yellow, or red light church. We are a traffic light church first and foremost, with all lights on. And the way we honor Christ and each other is to practice Philippians 2:3, as thinking of others is more important than ourselves. And it's a challenge because COVID is polarizing. People are tired and it's getting political at times. In another passage I'm reminded of in 1 Corinthians, the Apostle Paul saw that the local church was being divided by different opinions about how they should live. Some of them were fierce libertarians. We want our freedom and to do what we want. And others were a little more conservative. And so Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians 10:23-24, I have the right to do anything you say, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but not everything is constructive. No one should seek their own good, but the good of others. And so that passage, might speak, hey, you're free to have your opinions, you have that right, but not everything's beneficial or constructive. And once again, we want everyone not to seek their own good, but the good of others. So as your pastor, let me encourage you, prioritize the needs of others, learn what others' traffic light color is, and respect and honor them as a way of honoring Christ. In church, whether you agree with our kind of taking a slow approach that seems more yellow than green, don't let COVID divide us. Please keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace as much as possible. And we look forward to continuing to see you for outside worship during the month of September, or online through our live YouTube if you're still worshiping from home. And know that even in September, while we are going to be gathering outside, we will be working to prepare ourselves for inside worship, whatever date that ends up happening later in the fall. But we do want your input if you want to be a part of that planning process and help with some of the things that are needing to be put in order before we get to that point. Please let me know. We'd love to have your input. But friends, it's been a joy to know that we are not alone in the season, to know that we have each other, to know that we have God walking alongside us each and every part of the way. And so I hope you'll reach out to me if you want to talk more. Obviously, there's so much in the survey that we didn't tease out. Lots of perspectives, though, that were helpful for us to hear from you. So we really do appreciate. And if you didn't get to fill out that survey, we'd still love to hear your feedback. Encourage you to call or email me. I would love to hear your perspective and kind of add that to the mix as well. But I hope you have a blessed night, that as our sermon this morning spoke to, you will continue to keep moving like our earthworm friends, no matter what time or season we find ourselves in, and that you might have hope you can cling to, that you might have joy you can find even in the most difficult places, in the most upside down seasons. But friends, know you are loved, know that we're with you, and we can't wait to see you for worship next time around. God bless.